Hi friends, I hope everyone is doing well. Today is actually, since we've started the Kumi sessions, we don't have our expert, our guru, Ryan, who has been helping us since the beginning. So you might expect certain things not to go as smoothly as you are used to. But definitely this session will be another interesting session with lots of justice, truth-telling, and meeting wonderful people. Today we are blessed to have Jamal Juma, an excellent guide, an excellent advocate, and a person filled with energy to do miracles here in Palestine. Andrawos. So before we start the session, I want to remind you all that if there's newcomers, my name is Omar Harami, and I want to thank you again for joining the latest Kumi Now online gathering, as we focus on the devastating and illegality of the Israeli apartheid wall. We're thankful to be joined today by Jamal Juma, who leads the Stop of the Wall campaign. Before we start, I'd like to remind you all that this session is being broadcasted live on Facebook. If you do not wish to appear online, please turn off your video feed. And if it's, we'd appreciate it if you help in promoting this event, either now or sending the link of the video later on to friends or colleagues. So we're going to start now by listening to our guest, Jamal Juma. Jamal, are you there? Jamal, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, now.
Yes.
We're forcibly unmuted and I can't unmute myself.
Andrawos, can you make Jamal?
No, it's okay now.
Yes.
It's okay now.
But because you're going to be sharing a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, Omar. And it's really my pleasure to meet you today. And thank you very much for this invitation to talk to you about the wall, which is in fact, as you know, on the ground now, it has been shaping the whole situation that the Palestinians living in. And it is really the base for what's going on the ground now. And as I would say, like the international organizations like Amnesty, like Human Rights Watch, like B'Tselem as well, they were like issuing and stating clearly that what's going on is an apartheid. And since we launched the campaign and based on the understanding of the people on the ground, from the beginning, they name it as an apartheid war because it used to segregate the people from their land, to isolate them, isolate the villages from each other, the families from each other, the villages from the schools and the universities, the rest of the Palestinian people as well. In order to shed light on this, like practically, I asked Omar to share with you the PowerPoint presentation. The wall started in June 2002, so now it's 20 years after they start building the wall. And the wall has been, as I said at the beginning, it has been shaped the reality of the Palestinians today, where they became blocked in within this cement walls and the whole system of segregation that ends as an apartheid system. So at the beginning, as I said also that, I mean, this wall has been launched after a massive invasion to the West Bank in 2002, which ended in the massacre of the Jenin refugee camp and occupying all the Palestinian cities, destroying the infrastructure, the Palestinian quarters, police headquarters, etc. And they named the military operation that time by a security war. And nobody that time come to his mind what does he mean by that, until they start 3 years after that by destroying massively a wide area in the north of the West Bank, around 145 kilometers with over 200 bulldozers. Many companies have been participated while the West Bank is under blockade, and it has been totally isolated, all villages from cities and cities from each other by over 600 roadblocks and checkpoints. So the first like that shows us what the plan is like clearly comes from Qalqilia, the first Palestinian city that has been isolated totally. And as you see, this is the wall in the orange line. It's isolated the fertile land, the water resources, and block the Palestinian villages and annex the colonies. And that's what, when it's continue, it became like any also show, it became like in this map, which is clearly that Israel continue in the West Bank, not just like any inside the West Bank from the green line, as well are isolating and blocking the Palestinian areas, isolating it from each other, dividing it into three pieces. As I said, it's built on Oslo map. This is Oslo map, which shows area A and B and C. So the idea is blocking the whole Palestinian built up areas in area B and area A, and leave the rest, which is area C, with for the expansion of the settlements. And that's what happened. But in fact, when the wall plan comes, and this is very important to start to understand Israeli, how Israel is strategizing in their occupation in the West Bank. So they were talking about, and that's what has been launched in his Herzliya conference in 2001, a year before they start building the wall. They call it Israeli to 2020 vision, which is, in fact, the results of this conference, Herzliya conference, is what we see today on the ground. So what's this Israeli? So in 1992, Israel gathered 250 of their scientists from all fields, and they also invite the main leaders of the Zionist movement around the world. They contracted more than 30 very important research centers in order to do a strategy for the future of Israel in the case of foreign. Why they did that in 1992? You know that in 1990, the Soviet Union fell apart and the Cold War ended, and it started like the globalization. In 1991, also, there is the invasion of Iraq and the destruction of Iraq, and Madrid conference that came as a result of this. So in fact, the region is changing and the whole world has been changing. So that's why they start this massive and strategizing to see the future of Israel. Even some people called it is the second important meeting after the first meeting that happened in 1890, I think 98 in Lausanne. What came out start is the first draft in 1997. It came with 18 volumes. The volume about Jerusalem located in 9,000 pages. So to make it short, the results that has been come out concerning the Palestinian, the relation with the Palestinians. And here we are talking about it's strategizing while Oslo started. It's supposed to be, there is a process, peace process going on that's supposed to end up with the Palestinian state. It came with development, greater Jewish Jerusalem, and this engagement plan from West Bank and Gaza. This is a study that happened in 1990s. So when we talk about these 4 projects, it's clearly that the first 2 is targeting the Palestinians inside Israel, the Israeli Palestinians who have Israeli citizenship in the Galilee and the Negev. And the last 2, the 3rd and the 4th, is about Jerusalem and the West Bank and Gaza. So I can talk about each one of them for an hour, but to summarize it, it's like Galilee, for example. They find in their studies that there is the number of the Palestinians are 52%. So the whole plan is how to reduce this number to 38%. In the Negev, they are talking about this 45 unrecognized communities in the Negev they are controlling huge land in the desert. So the idea is how to concentrate these Bedouin communities, collect them from the Negev and concentrate them in 5 isolations. So in fact, we are talking about the model of like the reservations for the Native Americans. Like that was the thing that come to my mind, that collecting all these Bedouins and put them in. And they started. In fact, in 2006, they submitted to the Knesset. In 2018, they approved this what's so-called the Braver plan, which is, and as you know, they start targeting these Bedouin communities by destroying Al-Araqib, which is now destroyed for more than 200 times, and people rebuilt it again. So the revolution that was last year, when the people started to revolute after they decide to take 4,000 dwellings of their land and located in some of these communities and planted with trees by the GM. The Greater Jewish Jerusalem and Disengagement Plan, I will go on with some slides about it, because this is like an actual that's going on the ground, and that's what we were fighting since it started. So when we talk about Jerusalem, they talk about Greater Jewish Jerusalem. So the whole idea is like how to make the city Jewish city. So it's also about like any demography. So all this, what Israel is doing is about engineering demography to keep the Palestinian percentage as low as possible. So the Jerusalemites today is about, Palestinian Jerusalemites today is about 35 to 38%. The whole plan is how to reduce them to around 12%, to keep them a minority there. And the Judaization is not just like about pushing the people out, but also about Judaizing the place itself, changing the names to Hebrew names, intensify building the colonies inside the city. So what's the Greater Jewish Jerusalem that they are talking about? Greater Jewish Jerusalem takes, by the way, 10% of the West Bank. This is the one you see marked in this black. It is the wall. That's marked the Greater Jewish Jerusalem. So let's start from the south, from the Gush Etzion block between Bethlehem and Hebron. So this will be part of Jerusalem, and this is considered part of Jerusalem. So it's about 40 kilometers from the old city. It started to go up north, isolate Bethlehem, and isolate also the villages and then the west part of Bethlehem, then goes up to the north to Jerusalem to isolate all this Palestinian community in Al-Azariya and Abu Dis and Sawahil, Sheikh Saad, which is just like far away 5 kilometers from the city. And they became outside the city, while 40 kilometers away, the settlers in Gush Etzion became part of the city. Then it goes to the east, 14 kilometers to annex all the colonies of Ma'ali Adumim block, back again to Jerusalem, to take out the Palestinian communities of Shafat refugee camp, Banata, Hizma, Al-Ram, Al-Dahiya, up to the north, then the northwest villages of Jerusalem, which became like divided into 2 isolations and 2 ghettos to annex Givat, Ze'ev or Givon block to the city. So what they did in fact by this, they get inside the city, 200,000 settlers became part of the city, and they take out of the city 22 Palestinian communities, villages, including also Shafat refugee camps with 225,000 Palestinians. So they get inside the city, 200,000 settlers, and get out from the city 200 Palestinians. So it's an ethnic cleansing, but they didn't move people from their places. They just like build this wall that they didn't allow the people to go to to Jerusalem. And this devastated the economical life in Jerusalem, because the economy of Jerusalem mainly depends on the people from around the city and from the West Bank. So almost like the economy collapsed. It started to collapse even when they isolated after Oslo, which most of the businesses has been moved to Ramallah and Bethlehem, the surrounding area where the people can do. So this is the first phase of the land, is to mark what's so-called Greater Jewish Jerusalem. The second part is to focus on inside the city and the Palestinian neighborhoods inside the city. So first, the center of that is the old city. This is a map, like it's a picture, aerial picture from 1967. that shows how it was looking the area. The first thing that they did inside Jerusalem in 1967 is destroying the two main neighborhoods in Jerusalem here in the old city, Hart al-Magharbe and Hart al-Sharaf, the two neighborhoods, level it to the ground. That was led by Ishaq Rabin that time, in order to create Jewish quarter and to expand the Wailing Wall in that area. Then they start like the plan, the massive plan, taking over the Palestinian housing inside the city. Then the plans have been developed to isolate and take over all the surrounding of the old city. And that's what's happening in Silwan, in Wadi Hilwa, in Wadi al-Rababi. All these 12 neighborhoods in Silwan, 6 of them are targeted of ethnic cleansing and destruction. So they start in this area, which is close to Bab al-Magharbe and Wadi Hilwa, and they start archaeological excavation, taking over the Palestinian houses to achieve this plan. The down one was Hayy al-Bustan. They want to destroy all the area here to create an isolation or between the Palestinian, rest of the Palestinian Silwan and the new colonized neighborhood. So this is like around 1,500 people living there in 90 houses. That what they were planning to destroy, but the whole popular resistance there and what the people did, they didn't, until now they didn't able to destroy, but they continue colonizing the area. Then it comes from the north in Sheikh Jarrah. And the whole what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah is to evacuate the Palestinian communities from the other side of the city, the western side of the city, to make the whole surrounding of the city in what they called it Holy Basin. Holy Basin, it's ethnically cleansed from the Palestinians and totally Judaized, and make the old city is part of a Jewish sovereignty and part of the West Jerusalem. But they didn't let the Palestinian villages around, like Silwan, Jabal al-Mukabbir, At-Tur, and Hissawiyya, and they start like putting inside, in the heart of these communities, that highly intensive outposts or settlements, like the one in Ras al-Amud, the one in At-Tur, in the Mount of Olive, the one in Jabal al-Mukabbir. So 11 settlements like this have been put inside the Palestinian community. The aim is to create like a kind of continuous problems with the people there that make the Palestinian life impossible with the whole police and all what's going on there. This is just part, like all the Israeli organizations work together in order to push the people out from the city. The Ministry of Interior, the Jerusalem municipality with the oil plans, like the hundreds of thousands of housing units that they built and they are continue building. And they also create a belt of settlements around, creating huge blocks of settlements, like the one in the south of Jerusalem, between the isolated Beit Lahem from Jerusalem, from Jabal Abu Ghanim Har Huma to Gilo, in the middle, Givat HaMatos. And there's a plan of now for 3,200 housing units to be built in that area. So to continue the block and continue down to Bitar Elid and all the settlements there, up to Gush Atzion, to create this massive like blocks of settlements that became like increasing the population of the Jewish settlers in the city. And at the same time, this is the policy minimizing at the same time the Palestinian. So what you see now would go down on the map. Like this is a project that already, some of them already finished, some of them are still under construction. The aim of this all is to change the identity of the city, Islamic, Christian to a Jewish city. So it's all has like this Jewish character, Jewish names, spread all over, either in the old city or surrounding the old city. The other part, or the fourth part, which is the disengagement plan that we are talking about, as I said, it has been, the wall map has been built mainly and exactly on the area A and B of the West Bank, and leave the area C for the expansion of the settlements. So this is the West Bank without settlements, how it looks like. Then this is with the settlements. Until 1993, if the situation left like this, we wouldn't have any problem today. Because simply during 3 years of Intifada, the settlers can't reach the settlements because all their roads was going through the Palestinian cities and villages, and they were stoned all the time. So they have to, in order to go to to cross the green line to Israel, they have to accompany with the soldiers. So if they're really willing for peace, they will leave the situation as it is. But in 1994, they started with a massive bypass roads that's connecting all the colonies together and connecting them with free entrances and highways to Israel. What did this did? And this is, I would say, this is the mistake of Palestinians, that they, from that time, the second year of the Oslo, they should be, and that's what had in the negotiation was insisting on, is to stop the settlements, to stop colonizing the West Bank. So by this, they allow the settlements to expand, and they make the settlements like a project, permanent, solid project on the ground, and they slice the Palestinian areas. By slicing it this way, they pave the situation for the wall after that they came, and continue building the settlements, isolation of Jordan Valley and the sea, and create this complicated system, what we call it now, colonial apartheid system. I don't know why so at the end, and this map, by the way, it was from 2007. At that time, there was a negotiation between Ehud Barak, and this is an Israeli map, and Abu Mazen that time, Mahmoud Abbas, which is totally based on what we are talking about, like the wall dividing the Palestinian areas into 3 separated and isolated areas, Jerusalem to be taken away, and like any minus plus in area C here and there. So what's the system from that time? It is the wall that calling the Palestinians and blocking them from their resources. If you want a Palestinian state in the West Bank, you can't isolate their resources, because all the Palestinian resources are located in the what's so-called area C. Resources, the agriculture land, the tourism, the Dead Sea, the minerals, the expansion in the future. Now the Palestinian areas, look at Bethlehem and Ramallah and the main cities. It's became like refugee camps. Can you imagine the situation after 20 years? What the situation will be? So this is, in a way, when you think of it this way, this is a long-term ethnic cleansing plan. All the people that will come extra, life has become like unbelievable. So they will find another places to live. So they will live on their own, like their own. So Israel will not be responsible over another Nakba. The apartheid roads that controlling the system, beside the apartheid roads, that's very important. After Oslo, the whole policy of Israel changed from the settlers to be working inside Israel to try to connect the settlers' life in the West Bank itself. So they create 23 industrial zones, big industrial zones inside the West Bank. And they start to generate investments, even international investments, to these industrial zones. Besides, also in the Jordan Valley, this is huge agricultural investment that they control, almost 95% of the Jordan Valley, where they celebrate, like in 2002, planting the 2 million trees in palm trees in Jordan Valley. Can you imagine now what the situation is? If you travel through the Jordan Valley, all what you see is this orchards of palm trees that's mainly controlled by the settlements, and you barely see the Palestinians, villages and towns there, or the Bedouin communities that became badly targeted. So just like to show what does this mean when you talk about the isolation and the segregation and how the Palestinian lives looks like. They are talking about 48 bridges and tunnels that is going to control the Palestinian life and the settler movements also. So the settlers were using the highways, and there's the bridges and tunnels, the Palestinians were using the tunnels. So here they did the separation in the roads. In the worst cases of South African apartheid regime, they were not roads for the blacks and the whites. So that's when you talk about they consolidate like an colonial apartheid system, which was, it's not just like an apartheid system is worse than this. It's clear colonialism, what's happened, but there's a colonial apartheid system in the West Bank. So just to see how the Palestinian life looks like, if you focus that, we focus the map of Nablus, for example, and see this is the roads that I was talking about. This is the Palestinian communities, and this is the colonies. Salfit, this is the cut off in the West Bank from Kufr Qasim up to Jordan Valley, which is now, by the way, just yesterday they announced confiscating in this area 1,400 dunams to continue building the settlements and looking them, connecting them together in this area around Shiloh and from confiscating Radio Tormos Aya and Karyut and Jalut as well. So on the other side, this isolation is not just like this big isolation that they're creating, but there's another more than 30 small isolations that located between the walls and the settlements. Like on the west of Salfit here, there is like many villages will be isolated from the city. When they now they are working on it. So the normal and the old street that linking these cities with Salfit is this one, is about 15 minutes driving from that area to Salfit. After this finished, how they are going to reach Salfit in these isolated communities? They have to go through the tunnels to find how they can reach their own city. So the tunnels that they can use, the closest is Masha tunnel, Habla tunnel, Beit Lid tunnel, then you go to Beit Furi tunnel, Aqraba tunnel, Madama tunnel, and Salfit. And this is, you can submit it like to any of area in the West Bank and see how the Palestinians can be connected together in this apartheid system that we are talking about. The other thing is controlling the Palestinian movements through these checkpoints. They were talking about permanent checkpoints, about 34 near permanent checkpoints that they are controlling the movement of the Palestinians in and out from this isolation and outside. So they are classified. Something for workers, for example, for people in between like the one in, and for workers also from between Bethlehem and Jerusalem, in Qalqilia and Tulkarem, Columbia and the others. And there is agriculture gates, this is like mostly now, most of them is not functioning because they use it at the beginning and they start put so much restrictions on the Palestinians. So farmers, many of them can't anymore access their land behind the wall. Then in so this has been until 2017. 2017, when Donald Trump came to the power, and you know the deal that he launched the deal of the century. The deal of the century is mainly about liquidating Palestine issue. As you know, he started from recognizing Jerusalem as a capital of Israel, then targeting the right of return for the refugees, then legalizing the settlements, etc. So in 2020, they came up with the annexation map. And this was done by jointly American and Israeli team based on the deal of the century. So it's really, when you look at this map, they are talking about annexing 33% of the West Bank. But on the ground now, it's much more and beyond this map. But what's interesting about it as well, is like how even changing the routes. Maybe if you want to go from Bethlehem to Hebron, you will not be able to use later on the road number 60 that goes through from Hebron to Bethlehem, but rather than you will start using mainly Wad Seir for the Palestinians. Same like here in Nablus, Ramallah Nablus area. There's also an alternative roads for the road number 60. They are talking about 75 Palestinian villages will be totally targeted, isolated from the Palestinian areas, including Bedouin communities as well, which is they are targeted now. And this is like, we don't know the future of them, how it looks like. But what struck me, in fact, is like what they are proposing also on the north of the map and the south of the map, because part of it was talking about the triangle to annex it to the West Bank. the triangle, the Palestinian intensive populated area inside Israel, like to annex it to the Palestinian areas, and expanding Gaza as well, as you see from here, which is totally, nobody talking about it, like towards the Negev. So they will compensate Palestinians in Gaza in this areas. And what's very important is what's happening nowadays based on the launching the annexation map. At the beginning, they started like all this like the Emirates. They were talking about freezing this land, this plan, but in fact, on the ground, they went so quickly and so arrogantly implementing this plan. So they start doing it in different angles. The first one is targeting the Bedouin communities in the area C. Starting in 2020 with destruction of Hamsa. Hamsa is one of the biggest communities in north of the Jordan Valley. They destroyed for 7 times. We tried to build it again, and then they destroy it. And now it's declared as a military zone. Nobody allowed to be there. Some families left on a side of that area. Rashaidi also, Arab Abu Khribish, has been demolished totally. This is north of Jericho. Al-Meite, Bzik, the same, had been destroyed many times, and most of it, and people built it again. Ain al-Hilwa, Ain Shibli, Ras al-Ahmar. And that time also in South Hebron Hills, Zanuta and Al-Fakhid, they were destroying like big part of this communities. So this picture is from Hamsa, in fact, at that time, and this is like popular meeting that we were doing, and this is the other picture here when the consuls and the European Union representatives has been visiting the area. The other angle is like seizing the agricultural, grazing areas for the Bedouin communities. And we are talking about like a big number of like 29 Bedouin communities in the north of the Jordan Valley. They are like spread all over there. So they started blocking huge areas, like 30,000 dunums last year has been blocked totally in the area of Samra, Makhul, Hadidiyya, in that area. So they blocked the grazing area for all these communities. Nowadays, they can't reach these areas. And people don't know what to do. So with the settlers attacks, so many people started thinking to leave. And in fact, it became worse nowadays. Like I was there visiting some communities 2 weeks ago. In fact, we heard that people start selling their sheep. When we go there and meet the people, they were saying clearly, okay, we are standing there in this very difficult situation. Settlers attacking us all the time, military as well. They're seizing our areas. But also with this economical crisis, the fodder, parsley, and the wheat has been doubled the price. From 1,200 shekels, now they pay 2,000 shekel for each ton. And the hay, now it's like cost around 2,400. And this is beyond their capacity. So they said, okay, find for us a solution and we will not leave. So we are really in a crisis there, in a very, very difficult situation where if the Palestinian Authority didn't move quickly there and start to support the steadfastness of the people in that communities, and also without international also serious move to stop Israel from what they are doing, they will easily in the next 2-3 years, they will evacuate the whole area by all means. The other angle also that also to serve this is to start what they called it the pastoral settlements or outposts. They bring like a settlement, new settlement, they station it and they put it right next to the Palestinian Bedouin community, and they close the area there. They start grazing in the Palestinian fields, and they start attacking also the animals. They're killing animals all the time there by these tractorons and their cars. They attack the Palestinian cattle. They are terrorizing the people there, and this is backed by the soldiers. So all these factors that come together in order to push the people from that area. When you look at the settlers' attacks in the West Bank, as this is also including what's happening there, and this is an OCHA map, in fact, in the United Nations map, you see all these red dots that you have on the map, where the Palestinians suffering daily attacks from the settlers and also from the soldiers. So you see where this attacks in. It's like it's mostly on the areas, on the area C, in different parts of the West Bank, not just Jordan Valley, for the same purpose as well, to take as much as they can land, to make the Palestinians not be able to reach their fields and their olive trees in the mountainous areas, and they can't like plant their land in the Jordan Valley and in the south area of the Palestinian. And this is where comes the last and the most scary things that's going on now in Masafir Yatta. So this is the south of Hebron Hills. This, the one in red, is the area where they declare it by a military court decision as a military training, where the tanks is there now all the time. Today there was a destruction in one of the Bedouin communities there. The situation is really bad and devastated in that area. But you see here, they start also, by the way, building the wall, this wall in that area. And there's another proposed wall from the other side. So you see where it is, like, what is it for? It is for to get out these communities. And this will be also definitely this communities that away, that looks outside the targeted area, they are very, very bad, also affected by this. Now there is like military checkpoints there. They are chasing the people. They didn't allow anybody to go there. In spite, there was like activists now. They have a tent in Al-Majaz in this place here, and they are arresting people every day. And this is like it's like a battlefield became for the communities there. This is all to enlarge the settlements there and to take over all the area that we have there. And more than that, like, if you see how the situation has been escalated this year, until now we are talking about around 70 Palestinians killed until now from the beginning of this year. We are talking about 300 houses and structures that has been destroyed. Last year in 2001, there's 9,000. We are talking about 1,200 people that has been arrested, and it's continuing. What is going there in the Palestinian areas, it really is a war on the people in that area. And we didn't see it, and people didn't see it like this, but the reality, it is a war that's going on there. This is, in fact, it kills what Israel did by all these plans. It kills forever any possibility for a Palestinian state, especially that the international community is not caring about this anymore. And we see Biden visit to the area. He spent a few hours in Bethlehem, while 3 days in Israel, and all his plans about like reorganizing the region in the face of China and Russia and Iran. And the main victim is the Palestinians in this, which is like they are not in the map anymore. And they left to their destiny, where Israel can do what they want. And you know that he was proud that he's a Zionist. So in fact, when we talk about all the situation, where the way out? I think still the hope that the people have, and we have as a Palestinian people, is in the international solidarity, is in the people to be aware about what's going on, is to depend on ourselves and to increase our resistance. And this year, like I think there is like a lot of like efforts that is done by the BDS in order to go to the United Nations after the Amnesty and the Human Rights Watch reports to get a decision of like considering Israel as an apartheid state. And at the end, like your movement, like any respected movement around the world, there's a lot of hope in what you are doing and what you will continue doing. At the end, we have to meet our conscious, like our sense of humanity that we all fighting for. What's going is not going to bring peace for anybody, and the Palestinians will not allow to have another Nakba. And the whole region, if the situation in Palestine continue like this, is going to explode again. I don't think that the Palestinian Authority is sustainable. I don't think that the people can afford continue living such a life that's going on today, especially now when we have this like the financial crisis and the high the whole life prices that became doubled in everything. So in way or another, I feel that we are sitting like on, like, as we say, explosive balloon, like that. Sooner, I would say that everything will be exploded and we get back to the mess and the very difficult situation. Start from zero. Omar, I will stop here. Like, and if there is like any questions and things we can.
Thank you very much. That was truly an excellent presentation, Jamal. I think you have done a great job. Although we're not very, I mean, our spirits are a little bit low. But I want to ask you the first question. So this week is the anniversary of the International Court of Justice giving its opinion on the wall. A part of the importance of their opinion, how helpful has this been to the Palestinian people?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important, let's say, rulings and by the international law that has been done. When the International Court of Justice stated that the wall is illegal in 2004, it has been backed up us like with an international opinion that what's going on is like illegal and we can stand up against it. And to be honest, like in 2005, the Palestinian civil society launched the BDS movement. It was based on this rule, on the ICJ decision. Totally, it has been based on it. But the problem, to be honest, the problem of like implementing these resolutions, the international resolution, which there are so many concerning the Palestinian issue, that it's unfortunately is Israel. We feel that it's dealt with as above the international law. Israel never hold accountable for any of the crimes that they are doing. And maybe one of the last, like any important thing is the wall. If the international community stand up from that time and Israel stop building the wall, I think that the situation will be much better now, and it's much more easier, at least, to find a solution if you talk about Palestinian state to be established in this area, because the wall itself is a part of the whole colonies, and also when the ICJ talked, it didn't talk just about the wall itself, but it's talk about all the colonies, and particularly they are talking about Jerusalem and about all the occupation in the West Bank and what the de factos that they are creating, and they talk about its illegality. So the problem is the commitment from the international community, and particularly the official one I'm talking about, the governments and the United Nations organizations. But on the other side, there's like, we saw that the international solidarity with Palestine has been grown up really and became much more organized international wide. The other main problem is the Palestinian situation itself. I think the Palestinian Authority all the time is gambling, and like they had the hope in the United States and in Europe to pressure Israel to stop what the colonization of the West Bank and also to stop their crimes against the Palestinians. But this has never happened and will never happen as well in the future, because if you didn't stand up you yourself for this, the world will not help you. At least I'm talking about official level. So, in fact, our opinion is like in 2002, when Israel started building the wall, that was clear that Israel declared officially and openly that Oslo negotiations has been ended, and Israel has been putting the de facto solution that they see it from their own interest on the Palestinians, which is the apartheid system, and Israel to be from the sea, the river to the sea.
Thank you. I just want to remind people, please do write your questions in the chat, and I will try to ask them all. So we have a question from our friend Don Wagner. How did the latest US-Israeli agreement signed by Biden last week impact the ICC's possible ruling on Israel apartheid and genocide?
Yeah, I think, clearly when Biden came here and he signed what's so-called Jerusalem agreement, he officially like stated the position of the United States in supporting, in unconditional support, and this clearly like any. This is just to go to the next step, which is like any the aim of his visit, and what's the interest of the American administration nowadays, which is not in any way the Palestinians or what happened to the Palestinians, rather than the war in Ukraine and also the China and Russia and Iran. So that's where he tried to jump over the Palestinians and create this coalition between the Arab countries that normalize with Israel, and also try to expand this to Saudi Arabia and other countries to make Israel as a normal body in this area and accepted, and not just accepted, but in fact it's leading the whole area. So that's put more pressure on us as a civil society and human rights movements around the world, like to raise for our voice more, is to do more work internally inside our countries, particularly in the States and in Europe, towards like supporting the Palestinian rights, and like not try to shifting the whole problem to the east, rather than also looking at how important to solve the Palestinian problem, because it's not going to be any coalition succeeded. It's not going to be like any peace in the area without solving a just solution to the Palestinian cause. At the end, they are normalizing with the regimes, the dictatorships that they are creating, their puppets. But this is not the people of the area. And also, I don't know, it's like the whole dynamics of the powers that's now in the world changing. It could impact in way or another our situation in the future. So this is, it's going to be affect that, but I think more work needs to be done from us as Palestinians and as international solidarity and human rights movements around the world. I'm not talking about what the Palestinian authorities should do, but like we talk about this, but unfortunately they are still like trying to save the authority as itself, not the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian people. It's became the authority is more important than the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause.
It's very sad. I mean, it's also, I mean, that's very general around the world. Political parties became more important than countries or the well-being of people. But here's another question from our friend Valerie. Other than the extremist settlers in the outposts, who is living in the settlements today? So that's the first question. Then there are so many units. Are they viable communities of Jewish immigrants or second homes for Jews in the diaspora? Or they are largely empty and just a means of securing land? So.
Yeah, and of course there's like any different kinds of settlers that they are living in the colonies in the West Bank. But the most important is who's like dictating the policy, what's happening in the West Bank. It's the Yeshua Council, which is the Settlements Council, which is now, unfortunately, and it has been given much more power on the ground. Like it's a power of the government that they give to them. So the one who's now destroying for the Palestinian Bedouin communities, the one who's building directly the settlements is the Yeshua Council. And also they have a very well organized military groups that terrorizing the Palestinians and attacking them. They are very well organized. They are like an army, work as an army in the West Bank, and they are focused in the key areas in the West Bank, like in Hebron, in Nablus, south of Nablus, the area between Nablus and Ramallah, in Yitzhar and Bracha, and those settlements, and some settlements around Ramallah, and in the Jordan Valley as well. So in the main targeted areas, they put this fanatic criminal settlers that their job is to harass the Palestinian people and attack them. In Deristia, you know that in Skaka, just 2 weeks ago, a settler in front of the soldiers, he stabbed Palestinian in the heart and he killed them on the spot. He stay in jail 1 week, then they release him after that. So it's clearly that the Israeli establishment is supporting and not just supporting the settler groups. That's remind me in the exactly what happening just before 48, where this like gangs were like had been formed, and at the end they became the Israeli military. That they did the job of attacking the Palestinian villages and do the ethnic cleansing. In one or another, what they are developing in the West Bank is the same power and dynamics.
One more question. From the maps that you have shared and your presentation, a two-state solution is not going to happen. Do you think the only solution is a one-state solution now?
Yeah, a one-state solution is the perfect solution for justice in the area, for the Palestinians and for the Israelis as well. But the problem is that we are facing a settler colonial mentality, which is the Zionism, that they didn't recognize the Palestinians, and they worked all their best not to destroy any possibility for these people to have any identity or to have their state. So one state, yeah, we will struggle for one state, and so many Palestinians started to think, oh, like what has been left to the Palestinians from choices. But the one-state solution, which is Israeli push for it, and they are already established on the ground, it will be the apartheid state, the one apartheid state that controlling Palestine from the sea to the river. And this is all this needs also to have a struggle for generations in order to achieve that goal. Unless the international community has stand strongly, like what happened with South Africa, and stand up against the system and boycott it and isolate it, so they can accelerate the solution, which will mostly go towards the one-state solution.
I mean, the next question goes well with your comment, but in a way, it's Israel has a proven track record of breaking international rules and committing war crimes with total impunity. And so Israel has survived for over 75 years now by breaking international law and paying no attention to Palestinian rights. Why do we think that this will change, or the international community who has been silent for 75 years will speak?
I think this is our struggle for changing that, for making Israel accountable for it. And I think the BDS movement has achieved a very good steps in this toward this. There's much more awareness now around the world. Israel has been realizing this, and and we see from how Israel is targeting the BDS that this has been effective, because it's peel the narrative of the Israelis as the only democracy in the Middle East, and it's really shed light on the crimes that they are doing. And when we talk about the human rights organizations reports, it's it has been. I would say that the BDS movement has been contributed to make this happen. BDS also has been, and also with your movement and in churches also, they did a very important rule of raising awareness and make people understand better what's going on there, which is in fact reduce a little bit the support for what Israel, or make the eye open on what Israel is doing. In the United States, for example, as we can see, within the Jewish communities itself, there is a movement that didn't accept what Israel is doing, and they were joining the BDS. There is Jewish Voice for Peace and some other organizations that they are really doing a very great job in this direction. And I think we have been heard about this opinion that has been done by, I don't know exactly by whom, but that shows how the support is increasing within the Jewish communities there for BDS and against the Israeli, what Israel is doing in the occupied areas. So it's a long-term, in fact, struggle, and the one that can accelerate it is the change in the dynamics of the dynamic of the power in the world as well. So the financial crisis that's going around in the world now after the war on Ukraine would just like change the one controlling power that controlling the world now and make this balance within the power. This is one of the things that we are in fact looking for to impact the situation also in the Middle East, and particularly the Palestine cause. So I'm not saying that, I'm saying that this is the two-state solution the one-state solution will go tomorrow, or like Israel will be held accountable in like 5 years. But on the long term, yeah, I could see that Israel can't keep like falsing the people about what's going on. They can't continue systematically committing these crimes against the Palestinian people, and will keep like its superiority and its escaping from being held accountable.
So unfortunately, we cannot address all questions, but for everyone, we will be sharing this presentation, the video link of today's recording, all of it in the coming few days. But Jamal, we have some people who have asked, can they have the PowerPoint or the maps in the PowerPoint?
Yeah, Omar, I can send it to you through the WeTransfer, and you can distribute it to the people. Yes. I can email it to you.
Thank you very much, Jamal. I would also echo Jamal. I mean, BDS is a very basic request. Could we really put economic measures on people who are abusing human rights or violating international law? It's a very basic, simple method. A tool, non-violent tool, ethical tool to put an end to oppression. However, it's lately through governments, lobby groups, and even people who are very coward in their own churches or communities. Like BDS has become like a very bad word, or a very difficult word to be pronounced. BDS is essential, is important. That's the minimum that we can do. There's plenty more than we can do than more BDS. We should definitely boycott products that are not ethical, divest, and not make money from things that are not ethical. Together as a group of people, we can work together and we can rise up. Kumi is the word that we use. This should not make us depressed, this session. It should actually make us more excited and energetic to do more work. So thank you for everyone who has been really opening the eyes of people around the world on what is happening in Palestine. And we hope to see you next week again. But before we end, and thank you, Jamal, is there anything that you would like to share and say?
Really, thank you, Omar. Like I think this meeting is very important for people to listen to the Palestinian people on the ground and what's going on. And I really want to, and thank you for stressing on what we can do. In fact, as a Palestinians, we see the only option for us is to go straight forward and strongly for supporting the BDS movement around the world. So BDS is the way that we see that can do change and can do something.
Thank you. I mean, there are definitely other ways than BDS, but BDS is also an effective way. Either through education and so on. We don't want to downplay other forms, but we do not shy away from BDS. Next week we're meeting Adale, and we're going to be speaking about another problem for Palestinians. We're going to update you on family reunification laws, anti-reunification laws that Israel continues to impose on the Palestinian community. There isn't a single Palestinian family who is not is not in a battle of family reunification, whether people getting married from Gaza, West Bank, Jerusalem, Israel, or West Bank, and I mean, it is with Palestinians inside Israel. Many challenges, but a major part of nonviolence is also education, to know what we are fighting for and what are our challenges. Thank you again, Jamal, and thank you all for being with us. And see you next week, inshallah.